Good morning, guys. Today we are talking about the age of anxiety. That was the name given to the period of the first decades of the 20th century. And it was a period of crisis of the Victorian values. The positivistic Victorian idea that richness and welfare would have been extended, would spread to all the social classes had failed, and the poor had remained in their misery. There was also the crisis of the idea of jingoism and of the prevailing of the burden of the white men, and so of the superiority of the white race, and especially of the British one. Some countries that belonged to the British Empire got gradually their independence. And besides, there was also the First World War that left people completely upset as a result of a very long war that caused the death of millions of people, and that had destroyed everything. So new ideas from scientists and philosophers of this period destroyed the old optimistic universe and were at the basis of the building of the basis of the new literature of the first half of the century, of the 20th century. First of all, Sigmund Freud, with his interpretation of dreams, focused his attention on the human psyche and on the existence of irrational forces that of the subconscious that could condition human behavior. And that was very disturbing for people because that meant that a man couldn't control his instincts, his irrational forces, and that could have behaviors out of control. He also talked about the superego, that is the complex of the laws, religion and social convention that can condition the behavior of a person, but also that wasn't something completely new, because Robert Louis Stevenson in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde had already talked about this doctor that had created this potion, this drug, to keep his respectability, so to conform to the social conventions, to the superego, but at the same time the rational forces, the id, had become stronger with Mr. Hyde and had led to the doctor's destruction. And also new relationships were established also between children and their parents, because Freud talked about the importance of the education and of the consequences of the education and of the experiences of the child in his adulthood. And also the relationship between men and women changed as a consequence of the suffragettes movements for the universal suffrage. Freud also introduced for the first time the concept of free association of ideas. Albert Einstein went to the same direction, that was the relativity of time and space. And James introduced the new idea of time, according to which our mind records every single experience as a continuous flow of the already into the not yet. And he also introduced the concept of the stream of consciousness. Stream of consciousness, flusso di coscienza, that was not intended in a religious sense, but as the stream of ideas, thoughts, feelings, and emotions that move at the same time or follow to each other in the mind of the character. And also Bergson had a very strong influence on the writers of the following years with his introduction, and again went into the same direction, that was the relativity of time, when he introduced the psychological difference between psychological and historical time. Historical time marked, that is the objective time, that is realistic time, that is the time marked by the hands of a clock, and the psychological time that follows the emotional relativity of a memory, of an event, because so the emotional relativity of a moment depends on the stream of thoughts, of feelings, of emotions that follow that moment, and that depend only on the individual, that depend only on the individual in the previous experiences of a person. So on the basis of these new scientific and philosophical ideas, was the birth of verbal experimentation and exploration of memory in literature. What is the difference between stream of consciousness and interior monologue? The stream of consciousness is a psychological phenomenon. The stream of consciousness is the stream, the flux of thoughts, feelings, emotions that move at the same time in the mind of a character, and that move freely to and fro in time and space. The interior monologue is the new technique that was necessary to give a literary shape, a literary form to the shapeless, to the formless stream of consciousness. And that was the technique that both James Joyce and Virginia Woolf and also T.S. Eliot, a poet, used. Which were the features of the interior monologue? Well, of course, what was essential to this new technique was that it managed to give very, very quickly and in an immediate way a literary form to the stream of consciousness. So the writer couldn't waste his time in using the formal devices and techniques that he had used in the previous centuries. And so because the interior monologue had to be the immediate verbal expression of the psychological phenomenon that was the stream of consciousness. It had to be immediate. It had to be free from introductory expressions. It had to move on two levels of narration, that is, the external level, the realistic, the outer one, and the other one is the inside, the inside of the character, the mind of the character. Besides, this new technique had to lack a chronological order, because in the stream of consciousness there was no chronological order, as we have said, and besides, it couldn't follow no rules of punctuation, because it was completely useless to lose time in trying to use the punctuation, when what was essential was the immediacy of the expression of the stream of consciousness, of the mind of the character, and the lack of a logical order. Well, of course, not always the writers of this period used all of these elements at the same time. For example, Virginia Woolf used quite disciplined and cautious prose, and the same as for Joyce in the first part of his outcome, for example in Dubliners, that we will analyze in the future lessons. but he followed all these extreme devices, that is the completely lack of logical and chronological order, and no use of punctuation, and these techniques used in an extreme way in his last works, that is in Finnegan's Wake, that was the very last novel, and in Ulysses, from which the last part we have of Ulysses, we have read the monologue by Molly, where the story is all a sequence of sentences, of words, without any chronological or logical order and without punctuation. That is really difficult for us to follow. Okay, that's all for today. See you. Bye.